Good evening and welcome to the second Beyond the Front Page show brought to you by Cayuga Community College here at the college and shown on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, as well as ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and Win 89, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to talk about a number of events that are occurring right now at the Cayuga Museum. We have their Director of Development and Outreach, Geoffrey Starks, who's a return visit to give us every spring an update. He was here last February to talk about things that are occurring on the property, but one of the things that's occurring on the property is the property has changed, and we're going to talk about that. But for those who may not know the Cayuga Museum, which is right next to the Schweinfurth, you're on the west side of the city of Auburn. What is the Cayuga Museum for Art and History?
Yeah. So the way I usually quick notes explain what we are is we are the community museum for Auburn and Cayuga County. So collectively representing the history of the region rather than representing, for instance, the stories of one family, like unlike the Seward House, but we do also touch on the stories of the Case family and the Willard
you have the Case lab there.
Exactly. So the history of sound film is also a major part of our mission as well.
When were you founded?
We were founded in 1936, so we are the oldest operating museum in at least the city of Auburn, if not Cayuga County.
And I mentioned the lab, you have the carriage house there, so walk us through not what's new, but there's three distinct buildings on your property besides a tree, which everybody's always interested in, but what goes on in each of the three buildings?
Sure, so the main museum activities happen within what's called the Willard Case Mansion. We call it the main museum building. That's the one right at the top of the hill, big columns, looks like clip art of a museum. The Case Research Laboratory, sort of a middle building, often gets mistaken for a shed.
A lot went on in that shed.
In people's defense, it did operate as a shed for a little while, so but that is the space where sound film was invented. So if you like watching things like this, or if you're members of this, the Auburn Regional Media Access, it's like going on a pilgrimage to where this all started. And then the Carriage House Theater is now a multi-arts performance space, and
that's also been up and running for about a decade now. So what happens there?
That's we use it as both performance space, somewhere for our lectures to happen. When we have speakers coming through the area, we have a fashion show coming up.
We'll talk about that, but for example, in the last year you've had, I know Mr. Freeman was in there talking about his book. You've had the Seward houses use the facility. It's not only used by the Cayuga Museum, it's used by your partners, correct?
Yeah, it's opened for either rentals from members of the community or for other organizations to use, particularly those who might not have their own.
I think Leadership Cayuga has had their graduation there a couple of years.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to rent the facility, they can and bring in a caterer.
Yeah, I know we've had like dance competitions in there. We have Zumba there once a week.
So how are you funded?
Through a mixture of ways. We're funded either through me going and asking people for money, or corporations, grants, of course, and then a mixture of like memberships, admissions.
How much does it cost to become a member, and what do you get for it?
Membership is variable. Our lowest level membership is $35. It's a senior level. Biggest perk out of membership for everybody is free admission to the museum for a year when you renew your membership or join. And then our highest levels, they tend to come with a few more perks, including things like behind the scenes tours or even a free rental of the carriage house for any event you choose.
So I know you were displaced for a little bit during the year, and we talked about that last time you were on the show, and we'll come back to that, but I was stunned by the number of people who walk through your door in a given year. How many is that?
So in a given year, we usually see about 8,000 people in person.
So are those school? Is it a makeup of includes school? I know we have the Passport for History program, and Jeff Ludwig was on here a couple of weeks ago from Seward House. Is that because we have, is it fourth graders or fifth graders who go through, but you also get people who come specifically to come to see the lab.
Yeah, and it's a mixture of, that's also including people who might come to any of our programs and events. Last year, particularly, we had the Eclipse programming. That brought 400 people to Auburn for that weekend alone.
And I know, if you go to your website, you have a wonderful looking annual report, well designed, well thought out. I read a lot of annual reports, and this was a cool one for a variety of reasons we'll get into. But I know when you came on last February, the idea was to promote the eclipse that occurred but wasn't the most fizzy thing in the world. How did that, because you took people, you had special tours on top of the Phoenix building. How did that go?
That went great. It definitely was disappointing that it wasn't visible the whole time, but
It's a cloudy day.
But that also tracks with what happened the last time that the Case Research Lab was tracking the eclipse, because they were doing it early in the morning in 1925 and were disappointed by it getting cloudy.
And your next time is what, 20, 25, 45? That
sounds right, yeah.
So when I think of the Cayuga Museum, I think about it in three parts. So let's talk about the big part that most people come up those steps, go between the columns that I know you've been working on, because they never ever seem to survive in the Northeast. How often do you have exhibits, and how often do they change?
So actually, one big thing that I should note that has changed with the campus is our main entrance has now moved.
Okay, so where do you go?
So you now go to the west side of the museum, which is facing the Schweinfurth. It is for those who needed the accessible entrance, that is, formerly was just our accessible entrance. We now have an entire whole new level of exhibition space, thanks to now having this accessible entrance be a part of the
And this is all part of the DRI campus, which we'll get to in a few minutes, but I want to ask you about exhibits first. So
yeah, of course.
What is your current exhibit?
So the current main exhibit for right now is called Making History. It is a exhibit exploring Auburn's industrial history. It's both a look back at the past, but also we really wanted to make sure we were doing our best to be working with current businesses here, because one thing we've noticed, particularly while working with local businesses here, is there is this sentiment of, because industry is no longer this, in America in general, is no longer this field that's employing 5,000 people in one building anymore. People think that means it's gone. But then you have multi-billion-dollar organizations like Nucor right here in our backyard. So we really wanted to make sure we were working.
We also don't pay attention that one of our biggest exports locally now is beer.
Right, and so these are huge
Millions
parts
and millions
of it.
of dollars. Right,
These are huge parts of a continuation of that history.
When does that? How long does that exhibit run?
That will be until the end of May, because we have three main exhibits that we are planning.
And what
on
are
doing
the
this
three
year.
main exhibits this year?
So industry is the first one that will end in May. Starting May 30th, we will have a exhibit exploring Cayuga County's role in the Korean War, because it's the 75th anniversary of the Korean War this year. And then in beginning September 20th, we'll have an exhibit exploring the year 1825, which was very influential. It was 200 years ago. It was when the Erie Canal opened. So huge moment for New York State history.
Some Frenchmen came here?
Certain Frenchmen came and visited. I know that was a conversation that you had with Jeff last week.
I am a fanatic on the Marquis de Lafayette. I think greatly underrated, but came here, met with Seward. In 1825, there's a plaque on the side of what is now the Auburn Public Theater. Was the Bostwick Hotel, I think, at that time. It was also the old W.T. Grant's. And I know there are a number of events, and I know several of you representing the community are coming on at the end of April to talk about that. So that will be focused. So that's your event in the fall is 1825.
Yeah, and really looking at
So what was
that,
Auburn in 1825?
Well, so Auburn at that time, it's both a mixture of being a frontier city, but we were also at that time one of the biggest cities west of the Hudson. So that was a big moment of dynamic change for us. We actually, predate much larger. We think of Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo being much bigger cities. At that time period, Auburn was actually the much larger
And the prison
city.
would have been open maybe a dozen years by then.
Yeah, and so that was a big inspiration for that industrialism that really predates.
So we're going to have you on in the fall to talk about that exhibit.
Of course.
I know this week, as we tape this on Tuesday, it plays on Thursday, it plays on Saturday during the event or before the event, and then it'll play on Sunday as well. You have a fashion show this Saturday. Give us a thumbnail sketch of what's going on.
Sure. So this is kind of continuing from a fashion show, a fundraiser that we did 2 years ago in 2023.
So you've done one of these before.
Yes, and back then the main exhibit was exploring historic clothing and fashion in Cayuga County. This time it's taking a little bit broader of an approach to that, where we are working with local regional boutiques and places that have sort of a business interest within clothing, as well as local designers driving this work.
I looked at the list, and it looked like there's, for the most part, you have a designer hooked up with a local, maybe it's a diamond for somebody like that, and then they're pairing up, correct?
Yep. In some cases, there will be some pairing of local businesses, for instance, especially if that business isn't as large as maybe a boutique.
So this occurs, there's 2 events on Saturday, correct? Are they both at the museum or in the carriage house or in the lab?
It's kind of a mixture of both.
Okay.
So the main events will be happening in the carriage house. So this is a fashion show that's then followed by an after party if people like to dance to a live DJ.
Okay. So the fashion show is where?
So the fashion show is in the Carriage House Theater.
And that is from 5
to 7:30.
7:30, and that's where you will be able to see these creations.
Yes. I will say we are just about to sell our 50th ticket, and our capacity is 70, so people will want to.
Well, I was going to ask that. So how much is it? So there, again, 2 different events. What are the ticket prices for both?
$50 for the full event, which that
Okay.
includes access to the fashion show, after party, hors d'oeuvres, a free drink. We will also have the museum open after the fashion show is done, so people can go and explore the museum. There will be some limited shopping from some of the vendors.
I was going to ask you
available.
about that. So some vendors will be able to, I know there's a jewelry, sorry, I'm missing. Is it
Weston Company.
Weston Company. I knew it was with a W. Weston Company, they'll be selling jewelry there.
Yes.
Okay.
There will also, I believe there will be a few other boutiques that will be selling some of their wares in the museum as
So if you
well.
buy the earlier ticket, which is how much?
There's the $50 ticket that covers the whole thing, and then there's $20 for just the after party if you just wanted to come
Okay.
after
So if you
the
want to go
event.
to the fashion show, what does that cover? Is it just the fashion show itself?
It's the full event
Okay.
overall.
Yeah, but if you're just going for the party,
Yeah. If you're just coming to the party, it's $20.
and there's music that'll be there, you've got a caterer?
We have hors d'oeuvres.
Hors d'oeuvres, okay. And how many artists are participating in this?
So we have 10 represented boutiques and designers, and each of them has, I believe, 8 models working there. So doing math, that's like 80 people involved there.
And you can buy these how? How can you buy a ticket?
You can go on our website, cayugamuseum.org/spring fashion show, or just go to the museum, and I have it posted everywhere.
So you don't get a physical. So I went to your website. That's why I'm
Yes.
asking this. So you get your name on a list.
Yes.
We're apparently in a new century.
I know.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I have had some people ask about the physical tickets, and the paperless system is
Yeah,
we're fans.
I'm not a paperless guy. Okay, as you can tell by right here. So I want to talk about upcoming exhibit, but I want to also ask you, you also profile emerging artists as well, correct? Do you have anything coming up?
We do. We are bringing back the Emerging Artist Project. Was on a pause last year while we were doing the construction, but we do. And in fact, next Friday, we have the first of our emerging artists displaying his work. The official opening is part of our first Friday celebration. His name is Warner's son. He is over at Cornell, actually Ithaca College,
Okay.
in Ithaca.
Do not mix the two up.
No, I will not. And he is He specializes in artwork that takes sort of scientific concepts and creates collages out of multi-image pieces.
So he's a multimedia.
Yeah, multimedia, and it kind of generates these images based on these different themes. I know one of them was inspired during his COVID isolation and sort of like the mental anguish that we all remember from that time.
So before getting to, I know you've got some author talks, which I want to talk about two of those. I know you got an upcoming exhibit. We've kind of danced around this, no pun intended, about what this West End Arts Campus project is. And if you drive down West Genesee Street, which I do at least twice a day, one way or the other, what is the project?
Yeah, so it, sorry, I've been talking about it basically since I've started, since I've started my career at the museum.
Okay.
So I've just.
And how long have you been at the museum?
Since 2019.
And you've done Leadership Cayuga,
Yep.
you've integrated into this community. Where are you originally from?
Originally from North Carolina. I know you wanted to trick me.
I
to
just
say
wanted
North
to
Carolina.
see if you could say North Carolina without a...
No, my girlfriend likes to get me to say it every now and then.
But this is 6 years ago, and your director did a wonderful letter in your annual report and said, 6 years ago she was sitting next to Donna Lamb and the DRIs, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. 6 years coming to conclusion right now. I know you got a couple of punch list things right now, but in the overall scope, this is something that had been talked about for decades. You guys all brought it off together. What's being done? Or has been done?
Big things that have been done is increasing interconnection between our site and Schweinfurth to create more of a holistic flow between us, but also from both of our sites' perspectives, really focusing on increasing the accessibility of our sites. For those who are familiar, we're on a pretty sloped hill, and with the way that our grounds were at beforehand, it was very difficult for someone who, unless you're very physically fit, to even move around very simply.
So one of the main items is there is now a pathway that goes from the front door of the Schweinfurth to your western end.
And completely new sidewalks all across the campus. I know we get a lot of community traffic through that area, so they're definitely enjoying having more even space. Lighting, so now it is not pitch black there anymore. Our parking is all fixed up, so it is not a gravel lot anymore.
So that's the back lot on Orchard. That has been finished off as well, or is in the process of being
that's
finished
all.
off?
That's all done.
And so you've also made some improvements to the buildings as well, correct?
We did make so we've now moved the main entrance down to as I mentioned earlier, the west entrance. So now there's a whole new exhibit space. As you enter the museum now, you immediately get into the history of the actual mansion itself through the exhibit there.
And HVAC system has been put in?
Yes, that was a separate project, but we had HVAC before, and then we expanded it to the full building. We got work done on the columns and the original front doors, and so it's all sorts of fun projects.
So how much is the overall project, at least for the Cayuga Museum, if you want to give me the overall for both? Donna Lamb will be here in 2 weeks. She's coming on, but taking this bits at a time, what is the Cayuga Museum piece?
So the total cost was $1.35 million. That was the full funding all of those infrastructure upgrades, making it more accessible.
And how much of that did you all have to raise?
So the state covered about, I believe, a little less than half of that. So the rest was raised through a combination of the Emerson Foundation, probably the largest single contributor outside of that, as well as the city of Auburn, and then of just various local foundations and other grantors that we could find, individual donors.
So 6 years ago, if I went to the Cayuga Museum, which I did, and today, if I went to the Cayuga Museum, besides the entranceway, how would my experience be different?
Well,
And by the way, are you back open to business and operations full?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We're open Wednesday through Saturday.
Okay.
main things I think you will notice is, particularly if you're coming up from the parking lot, is just one, there's actually a sidewalk taking you up to the main entrance. So it's just easier, safer to navigate. Everything's more leveled. There's a lot of new greenery planted, which will be more enjoyable when spring's a little more.
The ginkgo tree is still there. It's
Ginkgo tree is still there. I'm actually shocked how many people thought we were going to get rid of that, because we would never.
Okay.
We love that tree.
So this is a collaboration in the sense of the arts campus, correct? Between the Schweinfurth and, I know you're doing separate projects, and Donna Lamb could talk about hers, you've got yours, but it is creating this thematic one-stop of the two places, correct?
Yes.
Does this mean that both entities are going to combine?
No, we are going to remain two separate entities. What this was is a way to, by physically interconnecting the spaces, is really giving us a space to do more joint work, to take things like the Emerging Artist Project and really expand that further, to be able to use, for instance, the Schweinfurth has many assets we do not have access to, and we have assets they don't. For instance, our Carriage House Theater, we can now use that more holistically within larger events. For instance, you could see like block parties to celebrate the community we're in. You could see arts festivals popping up. A lot more joint programming.
The reason I ask
together.
about this possibility is because obviously one of your director Kristen's messages was in 6 years ago she was just starting off as the director, and Donna Lamb had already had 20 years, and then she finishes off 2 paragraphs later mentioning that Donna Lamb is retiring, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks. That seems to be a conversation piece that has come up about every 15 to 20 years. Why are they not the same entities?
Well, we actually started off as completely separate entities. It kind of stems from
Walter Long,
founding both. Well, for one, the Schweinfurth was founded from a designated commitment from Julius Schweinfurth. And by that point, the museum had been around for 50 years, and the community had different needs for like what we were doing, because like the Cayuga Museum was taking on a bit more of a role of, just through the collection we had, a bit more of a historical role.
Speaking of your collection, I want to ask, in your annual report you mentioned that you had 80%. How many pieces of art does the Cayuga Museum own?
Probably, I personally do not know the full count, but it's probably somewhere around 200, 300 pieces
of art,
of just painting artwork.
And so 160 of those roughly were up last year.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
For those who were able to go see that at the Schweinfurth, it was pretty cool. We've never really done anything like that.
I want to ask you, you were out of the building for a while. How did that, you were at Metcalf Plaza, you had some temporary offices. Did that hurt you revenue-wise? Obviously visitor-wise it does, but...
We were free, so yeah, that was, it was a grant-funded opportunity, but we just knew that while we couldn't just go away while the arts campus was happening, so we knew we needed to be there to be the community museum we were.
And I thought I read somewhere that you'd done 80 programs last year, but I want to talk about 2 that are coming up. One is Vanished But Not Forgotten. It's a talk about the Cayuga County's Jewish community. What's the thematic? That is Sunday, April 27th at the museum?
That'll be in the Carriage House.
In the Carriage House. So what is that about?
So Austin Reed recently has been doing a lot of... He's
your speaker.
He's our speaker. He lives over in Rochester, I believe, and he's been doing a lot of scholarly research on the history of the Beth Israel, or B'nai Israel, my apologies, the synagogue, and really on the way that it fits within a kind of a larger story you're seeing across, particularly the Rust Belt, where you have the traditional rural or like small city Jewish communities that are just either non-existent or have so diminished that the congregations, have kind of moved on. But there is this rich history, particularly, here in Auburn, a number of our mayors were members of the Jewish community. You have a lot of influence that we were represented by George Michaels for a while, who was a member of B'nai Israel.
Deciding to vote on abortion in New York.
And these are, there's a major part of our historical story, and we are the main repository of the B'nai Israel's, the collections and
the synagogue.
Yeah.
So with that is April 27th. Is that free to the public?
That is $10 for admission. It is $5 for museum members.
And firefighter Brian Jesse is coming back?
Yes.
And what is he going to be, or not coming back? He's coming to the museum to do what?
He is going to be doing a lunchtime lecture the Friday before Austin Reed's talk. He will be coming to talk about the fires that happened around Auburn's industrial history. So, we have a lot of fires that were very impactful on the industries here. In many cases, it ended a lot of them. Wegman Piano, that all literally went up in flames because of a fire in their factory. So
will it be done in McCarthy? Obviously, your building had a fire some 50 years ago. So he will be covering the industrial side. You also have an exhibit upcoming, or maybe it's not, I may not have the right term for it. What were you wearing? What is that?
So that is a pop-up exhibit that we are doing with Savar through Cayuga Counseling Services. This exhibit was originally supposed to go up in April of 2020, but
something occurred?
Something occurred.
Okay.
So we've obviously been talking about that for a while.
So when will that start?
So that will be a exhibit just for the first weekend of April on display in the Carriage House.
And it has no connection to the fashion show?
No, it is no connection to the fashion show. It is a traveling exhibit that is sponsored through the University of Kansas that is a traveling display of the clothing that various people were wearing when they were assaulted sexually. It is a dark, it is an important story to be talking about, and it is something that, Cayuga Counseling Services, they have to deal with those conversations a lot.
Finally, any other exhibits coming up or pop-ups that we should know about?
Those are the big ones we have coming up. There will be another emerging artist. I don't think we're ready to announce that just yet.
But we'd love to have you back, especially in the fall, to talk about 1825.
For sure.
And do that. Our guest has been the Cayuga Museum's Director of Development and Outreach, Jeff Starks, to come on to talk about what is going on the West End campus. It is worth going to visit. You broke ground about a year ago. Believe it or not, it's sped through. I know still some work being done next door, but we'll hear about that in a couple of weeks.
Grand opening's May 3rd.
May 3rd. So please go to the Cayuga Museum, look at what they've got. We'll be back on Thursday with Cayuga County's Health Department talking about Healthy Neighborhoods Program with Deputy Director Deanna Ryan, as well as Senior Public Health Educator Megan McCall. And that'll be followed by a Beyond the Front Page with Liz Smith, the current Executive Director of Unity House, who's been with the agency for 30 years. She's going to be talking about what her agency does and what her plans are post-retirement, since she just made that announcement recently. In the coming weeks, we'll have Dr. Adam Effler, who will be on to talk about the Owasco Lake Watershed Council. Allie Colvin will be on to talk about the Auburn Chamber Orchestra. We mentioned Donna Lamb coming on from the Schweinfurt, but we're also very thrilled to have new Auburn Police Chief Matthew Androsco, who will be here to talk about not only what his goals are for the department, but recently released crime statistics that looked like they were going in a positive direction. We'd love to have your ideas for guests or particular questions. You can send them at cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. Have a great evening, and we'll see you back here in the studio on Thursday.